but we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, everybody? I'm Joshua Bardwell. You're gonna learn something today. Y'all ready to try? Well, y'all ready to live stream? I'm ready to get this on. It has been such a hell of a week. It's been a hell of a week. The same week that Remote ID rolls out, then the RedCat Roto Riot acquisition gets announced. And I don't know about, like, what's your sign that it's been a stressful week? Because I don't know about, I'm about 4/5 of the way into this box of Moscato. This live stream sponsored by Moscato, by Franzia. Franzia is the highest quality box wine you can get for those weeks when you just haven't got time to open a bottle. Franzia, bag in a box. It's a bag in a box, guys. Okay, gotta put it back there for the sponsor dollars. Okay. Okay, now I have to hang on. Some friends came to visit, and she brought a big old box of Franzia. I thought it would make a funny prop for this episode. I can't keep going though. Ken Heron, hello Karen. Thank you for the donation, Ken. Guys, we're going to open the live stream as usual with some news of the day and Swiss FPV, next JB stream sponsored by liver transplants. Yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not drunk. Not yet, Timo. Not yet. But it has been a hell of a week, and no, I'm not. I'm not. Y'all are imagining it. I did shave this morning though, so clean shaven. Thank you to Ken Herron in the chat. Thanks for Ken's $10 super chat. First of all, very generous of you, Ken. Thank you also, Ken, for editing my video. So here's news of the day, guys. News of the day. Remote ID is blowing up the FPV community. You can watch my video about remote ID with the FPV Freedom Coalition, but I do want to talk a little bit more about some aspects of it. I'm not going to rehash everything that was already said in the video because that you can just go watch the video, right? But there are a couple things I want to rehash, and one of them, I mean, just in no particular order. One of them is one of the responses that some people are having to things like remote ID. And we've seen this with every piece of legislation that has gone through all the way back to 336. Pardon me. I just took 2 giant swallows of Moscato, and now I just am smelling and breathing grapes and peach. Pardon me. One of the things people have said is, you irresponsible drone pilots, you're the cause of this. And I want you guys to stop that. And here's why. No matter who you're pointing at, sometimes it is a fixed wing guy, one of those bearded fixed wing guys out at their AMA fields who hate multi-rotor pilots. Sometimes it is a responsible drone pilot who's looking at somebody like Roto Riot or somebody else who they feel is flying irresponsibly. Sometimes it is me, and I'm looking at that jackass who let his Mavic fly away, or his Phantom fly away, whatever it was, and it landed at McCarran Airport. Whoever it is that you look at and you go, wow, that is so irresponsible. That is not why this is happening, and you're missing the point if you are blaming those guys, and you're playing right into the hands of the actual people whose fault it is. Now, let's throw this out. It's going to take a second because the chat's on delay. Let's throw this out to the chat. Who is the most responsible for the regulations that are trying to make it harder for us to fly? Is it Roto Riot? I'm going to keep talking while you put it in the chat. Is it Roto Riot for diving a bridge in Toronto or wherever the hell that was? Is it the dude who let his drone land at McCarran Airport? There you go. XJet. Good day. XJet. Oh, XJet. Wow. Bruce Simpson is in my chat. That I'm sincerely honored. You guys got it. You guys got it. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, airline. This was always this idea that if only we had been responsible, if it weren't for the bad actors, none of this would have happened. Bull pucky. Because yes, it's true that I'm just gonna, the guy who let his drone fly away and land at McCarran Airport, that guy, screw you, buddy. Screw you. He's not helping. He's not helping. Don't get me wrong. But this was coming. The entities like the Amazons, the FedExes, the whoever, the billionaires, this was always coming. And when we fragment ourselves by saying, if only you multi-rotor guys, us AMA guys at our fields were fine for 80 years, and you multi-rotor guys come along and suddenly it's all ruined. It's your fault. That infighting separates us, divides us, and lets the guys who are actually making this happen get their way easier. Let's not kid ourselves. They're probably going to get their way anyway, but don't fall for it. Focus your energy, focus your anger, focus it on the biggest place that will make the most difference. And when we no longer have to think about Amazon and, when our rights are protected, then maybe think about, because here's the thing. When you have a bad actor The right thing to do is to punish the bad actor. Think about the FCC. If I am a ham radio operator operating without a license, if I'm blasting a repeater, if I'm jamming a frequency, we don't suddenly outlaw everybody else's ham radio. We go find the guy who is being a jerk and we shut him down. If GetFPV got fined by the FCC a while back because they were importing 1.3 gigahertz video transmitters, among other things, but they were importing 1.3 gigahertz video transmitters that were not legal. GetFPV got fined, but we didn't suddenly make all these extra regulations. So these extra regulations are not the fault of bad actors. They are the fault of moneyed interests who want to make more money. And everybody should remember that. It hurts me when I see an AMA member flying fixed wing turn towards an FPV pilot and go, "You screwed this up for us." We're on the same side. We just want to fly and enjoy our hobby. We are not each other's enemy. Okay, so that's number one. That's number one. Let's take some chats. It's not Amazon as well. We're getting more and more people who have less space, less airspace, and everybody wants their piece of the cake now. Iceman Jones, the giveaway winners will be announced. I'll do the drawing. Well, I don't think we've even passed the day of the cutoff. But check it out, guys. Everybody wants me to announce the giveaway winners. I'm not 100% sure that the giveaway cutoff date is over, but check this out. This is my new 2020 is a new year for me. I got an editorial calendar. And you can see on the editorial calendar, here we go. I will draw the winners a week. I've got it down for a week after I announce the giveaway. And I will notify the winners basically Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So there's my editorial calendar. You can see what kind of things are coming up. The cutoff was the 4th. Yeah, so, yeah. But I've been super busy. I'm actually going to be hitting the road on the 7th. So I've been super busy trying to look at all these videos I got to stack up before I leave on the 7th. The NPRM should be titled Pay to Fly, says XJet. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You got to have a membership to the frickin' whatever, the service. It's BS. All right. So, that's number one. Number two. Mysterious swarms of giant drones keep appearing at night over Colorado. You hear about this? I'm sure you must have. Something strange has been happening in eastern Colorado at night. Giant drones measuring up to 1.8 meters across have been spotted in the sky at night, sometimes in swarms as large as 30. Nobody knows who's flying them. Nobody knows where they're coming from. Now, how does Real ID interact with something like, how will Remote ID rather interact with something like that? Because whoever built these, let's say that these drones are built by bad actors. Well, they're not going to have a transponder on them, are they? Why would they? So the argument goes that Real ID, or I keep saying Real ID, it's Remote ID. Remote ID is pointless because bad actors will just ignore it. FAA knows that. So then, does that mean that the end game, what's the end game for this? The end game has to be that it is impossible or difficult to buy hardware that will let you make a drone that is non-compliant. Because if you say every drone must have a transponder on it so we know who's flying it and where they are, okay, well, as long as I can just go buy hardware off of Banggood and build my own, I can just ignore that. That doesn't, I mean, there are some points to having intermediate regulation. The guy whose drone landed at McCarran Airport had his FAA number on it. He was a law-abiding person who just got caught because, so the regulation did have a positive effect. But it seems to me like the end game here has to be that they don't want us to be able to buy or build drones with our own hardware. They just have to make that impossible. But I wonder if that's ever going to be the case. And here's a glimmering ray of sunshine. Because the FAA only regulates the national airspace. And when you're indoors, you're not in the national airspace. So as long as you are able to plausibly say, I'm flying this drone indoors, it seems like you should still be able to buy one. It seems like it would be hard for them to just completely outlaw hardware. But it is interesting to think about, how would remote ID have affected this? Whoever built these drones could just build them without a transponder and do whatever the hell they want with them. Okay. Last thing. How can they enforce it, ionized FPV? Well, how do they enforce the FAA regulations about video transmitters? When GetFPV imports video transmitters that are non-compliant, GetFPV gets a humongous fine, and then they don't import them anymore. That's the gist of it. They can, if they are able to build a legal basis for this and achieve it without getting sued, they can just make it illegal and expensive to import this stuff. I think we're a long way from that. The other thought that I have is that, I mean, you could always just make your own. I mean, you could design your own flight controller and go out to some PCB fab shop and just make your own. I mean, it seems like you'll always be able to get hardware if you know where to look. But it does seem like they can clamp down on it. Brian Rodriguez says, hey, Joshua, I'm about to go fly for the first time in a few minutes. What should I keep in mind? Check your fail-safe with props off before you fly, Brian. Take your props off, arm the quad, turn your transmitter off. If the motors don't stop, do not fly. Okay, one more thing in the news of the day. It's been a busy week. Let me just get I'm tempted to take another chug of Moscato as a joke, but it kind of tastes nasty. Next news of the day. What a week for this announcement to go out. RedCat to acquire Roto Riot. And I'm only talking about this because so many people are asking me about it, and I feel like I want to put something on the record. And by the way, some people have said, didn't this get announced in June? In June, they announced the intent to do it. And then I guess for the last 6 months, the lawyers and the accountants have been like, and now they've announced that it's actually going to happen. And in case you're wondering, like, because RedCat is a publicly traded company, they have like a legal obligation to announce these steps to the public. So that's official. That's going through. RedCat will be acquiring Roto Riot. So, and people say, what do you think of this, Joshua? First of all, let me be clear. I'm not a Roto Riot employee. I'm a cast member on the YouTube channel, but I'm not a Roto Riot employee. I don't work for the company. These guys are my friends. That's absolutely true. But I have no financial stake in Roto Riot as a company. I don't take any paycheck or sponsorship money from him. I am an affiliate at the Roto Riot store, just like I'm an affiliate at Race Day Quads, GetFPV, Amazon, Banggood, Newbie Drone, and a bunch of other stores. So that's the only, but I have no stake in this particular thing. So my first thought is, I hope this means that we have budget to do shows like back in the day. You remember how good the first episodes of Roto... Oh, let's not go there. One of the reasons the first episodes of Roto Riot were so epic is that somebody else was bankrolling them and just was trying to blow up the channel and was throwing a lot of money at travel and stuff. And it would be great to see Roto Riot, instead of being completely self-sufficient and every month having to justify its budget, it would be great to see Roto Riot be like a decimal point in the budget of a much larger, more profitable company, so we could make excellent episodes without as much struggle. I think that would be fantastic. XJet says Roto Riot had 2.6 million time to pay, 2.6 million in 2019, time for better pay for the pilots. XJet, that's 2.6 million in revenue. 2.6 million in revenue. That doesn't actually tell you anything. You know this. It doesn't tell you anything about the actual profit, how much money was left over to pay for things like salaries. You would think with 2.6 million in revenue that you would have some profit, but I happen to know about, I mean, like, for example, there was debt to Lauren International, which was the company that Chad Kapper bought Roto Riot off of. That purchase incurred, and I don't know a lot of the details, but I do know that debt was hanging over the head of the company. It was a significant amount of debt. There was a lot of money tied up in inventory as well. So don't assume that just because you see 2.6 million in revenue that there was just piles of money laying around. I was a part of the company between 2018 and 2019. I was not an employer, but a cast member, and I can tell you, well, anyway. So the other thing goes back to remote ID and the question of RedCat, because RedCat and DJI are both in a position to benefit from increased regulation. DJI because they make quadcopters that can comply with regulation, and RedCat because they are working on making flight controllers that track your data. And let me be straight with you. People are saying, boycott DJI, because, I mean, if that's how you feel, go ahead. But don't think that somehow we're going to throw up a wall and stop this in its tracks. If you're out there and you say, screw you, Bardwell, I'm throwing up a wall and I'm going to stop this in its tracks. Okay, I support you, but I just on a personal level, I don't think you're going to succeed. So then the question is, if you presume that additional regulation is inevitable, what then? And I want someone out there to be making something that, I mean, I've met Jeff Thompson. I think he is sincerely an enthusiast about FPV. And I think that when Jeff Thompson says, I will fight this regulation, I mean, I think that he means it. When the FPV Freedom Coalition, look at what the FPV Freedom Coalition is doing. They're not mincing words. They're organizing people to fight this. And if they had some ulterior motive, they wouldn't be doing that. So I want someone out there, when you assume that the regulation is going to happen, to try and carve us out any kind of a niche where we can continue to fly. That's what I say. All right. That's it for the news of the day. Let me look for some more. Bobcat FPV says, I still believe the FPV Freedom Coalition is a hoax. RedCat and Kapper have too much to gain from regulation money-wise. You're not wrong, Bobcat. I mean, I've been thinking about how to think about this. RedCat will benefit if there's additional regulation. There's no doubt. I mean, that presumes that their only motivation is money, which, I mean, it doesn't necessarily, that's not everyone's only motivation. But look at when I think about the FPV Freedom Coalition, I think about guys like Dave Messina, and I talk to Dave semi-regularly, and if you look at what they're doing, they're saying, here is how we can fight this. So if Kapper and Jeff Thompson are secretly like trying to make this regulation happen, then the guys actually boots on the ground haven't got the message, you know? And guys like Dave Messina and Josh Cook are actively fighting this. And maybe Kapper and Thompson are back in the back room going, damn it, this was not our plan. We didn't mean for them to actually fight this. I don't know. I'm not saying that's true or not, but... yeah. Zach Cagley in the Discord asks, what about personal property? Do I own the property in my airspace? I don't know about that, man. My understanding of airspace, Zach, is if you are not actively using the airspace, it doesn't belong to you. So if you set up antennas in your backyard, then that airspace belongs to you. And if airplanes flying through the airspace interfere with the end, if you're doing something with the airspace in your yard, then it belongs to you. But I mean, if you think about it, you can't just say this airspace up to 380 feet is mine if you're not actually using it for anything. The other thing is that the FAA still, I mean, we could be in a park. We could be in a park flying in the trees We're below the tree line. Clearly, that's not part of the national airspace. Well, the FAA doesn't agree. Alrighty. So even if you do have a ham radio antenna, you still can't fly in that airspace. Dave Messina in the chat. Thank you, Dave, from the FPV Freedom Coalition. FAA has the authority to regulate the national airspace from the ground up. Yeah. This idea, there was this case about the airplanes messing with this guy's chickens or something. Yeah, I don't think that's you're not going to get anywhere with that. All right. So, with that all out of the way, let's take some questions. Guys, it's a Q&A live stream. Happy Sunday afternoon. Here's what I got in front of me, in case you're new here. This is the chat. This is the pleb chat. Hello, pleb. Pardon me. Hello, plebs. Moscato burps. Hello, plebs. I'll be taking your questions. You guys will ask them. I'll answer them. I'll get as many as I can. If you want to get your question called out into a separate window to make sure I don't miss it, hit the $ right down here and send me a super chat. And I've already got some super chats stacking up. I'll go ahead and get those in just a minute. And over here on the left, these are my patrons over in the Discord server. And if you want to join my patrons over in the Discord server, there's a link in the video description how to join my Patreon for as little as $2 a month or more if you feel like I've earned it. Zach Cagley, or is it Cageley? I think it's Cagley. So in short, we aren't just going to weasel our way out of this mess. You are correct, Zach. And several people have messaged me and said, what if we claim that FPV is our religion? Then we have a religious... And I'm like, ask the Rastafarians how that went with marijuana. I mean, there are religious exemptions to a few federal laws, but they are pretty few and far between. All right. Mark Spatz, UAV Tech, took his line right there. All right. Joshua Moss, to get the Discord link, you got to be a patron. That's how you get the link. Message me. If you are a patron and you're not on the Discord, message me on Patreon. I'll get you the link. Let me get a couple of these super chats out of the way, and then we'll start taking some questions. Ken Heron, thanks for $10 for another adult juice box. Thank you, Ken. I'm hoping that Ken. It's possible that I'll be seeing Ken again next week in Orlando. No, week after next in Orlando. I hope he comes out. That'll be really fun to see him again. JB, how does the remote ID apply to private property owners that open for flying? Roland B, if you are in the national airspace, it applies to you. So I have seen places where they put up a netting. They'll have big 60, 70 foot tall posts with netting around and over. Now you're no longer in the national airspace. That's the line. If you're under a roof, you're no longer in the national airspace. But other than that, it's your backyard, private property, doesn't matter. Still part of the national airspace. Coelho FPV, thanks for $5. Happy New Year to all. Actually, I have to work today. We'll watch tonight. All right, thank you, Coelho. Thanks for $5. James Bachen, thank you for 100 of these things. Rupees, I think? Joshua, love your videos. After a couple of flights, the negative pad of my 4-in-1 ESC came out. I can't solder my XT60 lead back. James, I'm sorry to say, man, there's no fix for that. There are some things you can do to try to repair a lifted pad, but for the power pad on your flight controller, so much current is flowing through that. Like, you could theoretically use the ESC minus pad instead of the XT60 pad. But the ESC minus pads are designed to take 1 motor's worth of current. So if you shove 4 motors worth of current through that pad, it'll probably lift. So I think the ESC is just toast. Leon Kettling, thanks for €229. Are T16 Pro gimbals comparable to the M9 gimbals? Leon, personally, I think the M9 gimbals are a little bit better feeling than the T16 Pro gimbals. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not much of a gimbal snob, but I do think the M9 are a little bit higher quality. Caleb Liska, thank you for €10. I have a problem with the throttle shakes. I had a crash where afterwards one of my motors wasn't spinning anymore, Now it's working again. Is the motor or the ESC the problem? Caleb, it's really just process of elimination. You inspect for visible damage, but if you don't see any visible damage, then you just swap the motor, and if it still does it, you swap the ESC. That's basically it. Minos Pilokatas. Thanks for 5 quid. Hey, Josh, any idea why current won't come through ESC telemetry, but everything else does? A lot of ESCs nowadays have taken current sensing out of ESC telemetry, and they only do it via analog. So it used to be that if your ESC had ESC telemetry, then current was in there. Now you can't make that assumption anymore. If your ESC has both telemetry and analog, then probably what's happening is that RPM and temperature are in telemetry and current is in analog. So you need to use analog. That's it. It's Blunty in the Discord. Thank you for being a patron, Miss Blunty. It's Blunty in the Discord says, is there a good way to electrically test components like motors, ESCs, flight controller, etc. to see if there are faults? Yeah, there are various ways to do that. One of the ways to test an ESC, I actually have a video about it, is to you use your multimeter to test for continuity to the motor pad. If the ESC has continuity to the motor pad, then the FET is damaged. It's not foolproof, but it's not there can still be faults that doesn't detect, but that's one way to test for faults. For motors, you can use a Henry meter to test the inductance of the motor, or if you have like a milliohm or microohm, a really, really sensitive resistance meter, you could test the resistance of the coil. There's another thing you can do, it's plenty, where you take a drill and you spin the motor bell and you measure the AC voltage being induced back on the wires. And if you know the RPM of the drill, then you can measure the voltage and know what the kV is. And you basically just test several motors and see if they have the same voltage. And if one is way different, it's probably damaged. Alilak in the Discord asks, regarding DJI, I always wanted to ask one question about the DJI controller. What's the max transmission range in your experience? So max range heavily depends on obstructions. People have gone kilometers on DJI with no obstructions, but if there are obstructions, it quickly gets lower. I've found that the DJI system has approximately the same range as like an 800 milliwatt analog video transmitter in informal testing, and I've never had a fail-safe of the receiver of the controller. If you think about it, the controller has much less data to send than the video. The video is 25 megabits per second or whatever. And so as long as you've got video, you'll have controller. All right. Let's get back to the pleb chat. Lone Lion FPV wants to know, I seem to be getting a lot of noise in my video. Should I add a capacitor on the XD60 or on the 4-in-1 pads? Lone Lion, the closer the capacitor is to the source of noise, the better. So it's best to put the capacitor on the 4-in-1 power pads. But anywhere is better than nowhere. So if you just can't get it in there, put it on the XD60. It's fine. Patrick FPV wants to know, what do you think about soft mounting motors like Johnny FPV? Johnny FPV posted that thing about soft mounting motors, and I still can't tell if he was trolling. Soft mounting motors does reduce vibration. It is a fact, but most of the time it's not necessary, and I don't do it as a matter of course. If I would rather soft mount the flight controller, and today filtering is even better than it was. So I would not say to soft mount motors generally. And even if you had problems with vibrations, usually there's a better solution than soft mounting. Leo RJFPV says, live on Sunday? Need a girlfriend. Leo RJFPV. First of all, way to presume, way to be heteronormative there, Leo. You don't know that I would have a girlfriend. Maybe I would have a boyfriend. Also, I'm married and have a kid. So, if I had a girlfriend, Anyway. Iceman Jones says, I'm planning to buy a Tiny Hawk. I don't know if I can trust Banggood, or how long does it take for Banggood to ship it to you? Iceman Jones, Banggood shipping depends on where you live in the world, but in the United States, you can assume that it'll be 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, maybe longer. I do. Johan Verepta, I do have 2 kids, actually. I have 2 kids. Luzifa1 wants a alternative to the FR632 diversity receiver. I can't find it anywhere. I assume you want a ground station, Luzifa? Honestly, man, what's like a good ground station these days? Everybody's using Fat Shark modules. Yeah. One of the chats here was talking about Banggood, but it got auto-corrected to read, Babyhood can be trusted. Babyhood can be trusted. Swiss FPV, you're right. Marry does not exclude the girlfriend option if you're brave. I mean, that's between you and your wife and your girlfriend. It's not my business. Juldor wants to know, in Betaflight failsafe settings, there's a setting called Throttle Low Delay. What does this setting do? What the Throttle Low Delay does is, oh my goodness. Oh wow, it's been a while. I gotta look it up. Wow. I almost remember it, but then not quite. Here we go. We got to turn to prop washed here. Prop washed. Throttle low delay. Throttle low delay allows the quad to disarm instead of following the full failsafe procedure. If the throttle has been off for this amount of time when failsafe kicks in, it will simply disarm normally. So remember that when failsafe happens, the first thing that happens is we go into stage 1 failsafe, where all the channels freeze or go to predetermined values, and then you could have GPS rescue, you could have it set up to go into angle mode. There are various things it can do other than just shutting down. Now, in my opinion, most people should just have it set to shut down. But with throttle low delay, the idea is that if you arm, but the throttle is down and you haven't taken off yet, and then you fail safe, well, we're not even flying. So that's what the throttle low delay does. If you have your failsafe set to just kill the quad, then I don't think throttle low delay matters, because killing the quad is always what's going to happen when you failsafe. There's no alternative. Iceman Jones wants to know, can any radio connect to any drone, or do you have to have a specific type of radio for a specific type of drone? Iceman, the controller has to be compatible with the receiver. So Free Sky controller, Free Sky receiver, Spectrum controller, Spectrum receiver, and so on. Hoverfly saw Mobula 6 review in my schedule. Yay or nay? Hoverfly, I can't, it's not ready yet. I can't say, my friend. Still working on that review. You do remind me, though. I think there was something else. Was there something else? Why am I not logged into Trello anymore? That's weird. Go to your boards. There we go. There was something else I wanted to say, though. The jumper. You're right, Drone Racer. The jumper T16 can bind to Spectrum, Free Sky, Fly Sky, etc. Can do them all. There we go. Yeah. Oh. Well. Yeah. Never mind. That's not that big a deal. 4.3 lens. How do I fly a Cinewhoop setting on Velocidrone or Liftoff? I can't find the Syndrome Squirt 2 on any of the simulators. Don't worry about that 4.3 lens. The simulators just fly whatever they've got. the simulators are not going to be that accurate anyway. Like, I know all the simulator manufacturers like to say, ours flies just like the real thing, and there's some truth to that. But the experience you'll get flying in a simulator will translate. Even if you're flying, I mean, if you're flying like like DRL Simulator comes to mind. The default quad on DRL Simulator is like 5S 2400 kV. It's some ridiculously powerful thing. And I'm like, oh, that's not the same. But just fly whatever in the simulator. It's not that big a deal. If you want to make it fly a little more like a Cinewhoop, reduce the power and set low up tilt. That's what I would say. Wout van Distwinkel wants to know, is it a good idea to run 6S batteries on 4S rated motors? No, not really. You can do it if you have a throttle limit, but the RPM are going to be so high that it just destroys your battery, typically. The motors will probably take it, but they just will fly like crap. David Lasowski wants to know, the Roto Riot episode where all three of you PID-tuned the same quad. What's the difference between a 4S and a 6S tune? And if you add a 6S throttle scale cut to 4S, is the tune the same? So David Lasowski, the first thing to think about is the RPM at the motor. If you have a 6S quad on 1666 kV motors, that is the same RPM as a 4S quad on 2400 kV motors. Check my math there, but if I remember right, those are the equivalents. At that point, the PIDs should be almost the same. Now, it's true that the 6S setup is going to have a little bit different throttle curve, a little bit different efficiency, and a little bit different torque. But overall, if the RPM at the motors is the same, then the PIDs should be approximately the same. Now, the thing is that what most people do, though, is most people fly 6S 1750 kV, 1800 kV. They up that kV. And you wouldn't normally fly 4S 2800 kV. But with 6S, you can do it. You can do it because the extra torque means you get away with it. So usually on 6S, you've got more RPM at the prop, and therefore you kind of reduce your PIDs a little bit. But in general, I start with the same default PIDs as long as the RPM at the prop is about the same. Extinction says, maybe time for a power supply update or reminder. Extinction, that's interesting that you mentioned that. Over here on this is my website, in case you're new here, fpvknowitall.com. And it has the ultimate FPV shopping list, which has all my product recommendations. And I've got a section here on power supplies where I have added this guy here, which is Banggood has started selling these server power supplies. Now, you can actually buy one of these cheaper and you can mod it yourself, but some people don't feel like doing that. But you can get it from Banggood for pretty cheap. Comes with XT60s pre-installed and already modded. And I have added that to the website. Orion Jakarov, is it worth trying to straighten and reuse bent props or just toss them? Orion, whether I straighten and reuse bent props depends on my goal. Like, I have had a couple cases where I was trying to shoot a video and a bent prop gave me jello that I didn't see in the FPV feed, and it ruined my footage. So if I'm like on a Roto Riot shoot, or if I'm trying to like make the next epic freestyle edit, anytime the props bend, I'll change them out because I just don't want to risk ruining my footage. But for general tooling around, yeah. And what I do is I take the props and I look at like the left side prop which isn't bent and the right side prop that is bent, and I'll bend it up until it matches. And then I'll just spin the one and watch that the props line up together. And I'll just go all around the quad, making sure they all line up together. And that gets it pretty good. Levente Mohar, is it possible that my flight controller died because a piece of a chip broke off? Yes. Yes, absolutely. All of the chips on your flight controller are required. If it died and a piece fell off, that's why. Yeah. Let's see here. David says if I enable turtle mode, it doesn't work. David, the question that I need to know the answer to is, do the motors reverse and do they spin when you enable turtle mode? Those two are the questions there. Let's get some more of these super chats out of the way. Had a couple more super chats come in. Joe C.J. Rod, thank you for $5. Do you know what happened to Underground FPV? I was looking at the Dark Knight Nirvana, but the website seems to be different now. Joe C.J. Rod, I don't know what happened to them. I do know that a lot of people are wondering that. A while back, I heard that there was a fire at the owner's house, or at their office, or maybe this house was their office. I don't remember, but I don't know more than that. Roland B, thanks for $2. Minos Apilakotas, thank you for five quid. I see. In that case, there's a current wire as part of the cable between the ESC and the flight controller. How do I configure this? Minos, usually to get analog current sensing working, what you'll do is in the Betaflight power and battery tab, you'll set the current sense to internal ADC. That's almost always how to do it. Roarstar McTavish wants a 2-stage arming video. I can help you with that, my friend. The simplest way to do a 2-stage arming video for Betaflight is pre-arm mode. And I have a video about that, which I will paste into the chat. Pre-arm mode. There you go. Steve Koptira. Sorry, Steve. Steve wants to know if the DJI transmitter can be used in mode 3 and 4. I think it only does mode 1 and 2. I would have to look. I'm like 49% sure that it doesn't do mode 3 and 4, but I'm not actually confident. My question is, why do you want to use mode 3 and 4? Don't do it. You think there's a good reason why you want to use mode 4, but just don't. Just use mode 2. Use mode 2 like everybody, so that when you just use mode 2. Just use mode 2. Whatever reason why you think it's a good idea for you to use mode 4. Unless you're like, well, actually I have a disability that means that I have to use mode 4. Okay. I'm not going to go up. But if you just like, I play first-person shooters and mode 4 feels more comfortable. No, shut up. Learn mode 2. It'll take you a couple hours. You'll be fine. Jack wants to know, is RPM filtering useful for a 3-inch or smaller quad? Yes, absolutely. Almost more useful than 5 inches. Ron Grant, thank you for a $5 super chat. I have a bunch of motors of the same brand in a box. They're all different KVs and no marking for KV. Ron Grant, here's what you do, man. Get your multimeter. Set your multimeter to AC volts. Connect your multimeter to 2 of the 3 motor wires, and it'll read 0 volts. Get a drill and chuck the motor shaft in the drill and spin the drill. Just pull the throttle all the way. The drill will spin at about the same RPM every time, more or less, and then measure the AC volts. Motors of a different KV will have a different AC volts based on the RPM. Tilo, thanks for €1. Cameron Kalegi, thanks for $2. Has DRL connected with the FPV Freedom Coalition on the proposed regs? I don't know the answer to that, Cameron. I do know that Dave Messina from the FPV Freedom Coalition was in the chat a little earlier. Maybe he still is, but I don't know the answer. Miha Vuk, thanks for €5. Recommended universal Session 5 settings to avoid changing settings for different situations, etc. Miha, I got you. Here are the settings that I use almost all the time for a GoPro. Lock ISO at 100. What this does is, for a session, you're going to need to lock it at 400. They won't let you lock it at 100. Lock ISO at the lowest value you can. This maximizes motion blur. It's still not enough for all situations, but it maximizes it. It also reduces grain for what it's worth. Lock ISO at the lowest value you can. Shutter speed, I like to have automatic. Now, you might think locking the shutter would be best because it would allow you to control the motion blur. You're right, but the problem is that if you lock the shutter speed, then when you fly under the trees, it's going to be underexposed. And when you fly over the trees up in the sky, it's going to be overexposed. The things that we do with quads usually are not in controlled lighting conditions. So you just need to let either the shutter speed or the ISO be set to automatic. And personally, I think the better thing to do is to let the shutter speed vary. Lock white balance. If you're going to color grade, lock white balance. If you're not going to color grade, don't lock white balance. GoPro flat color if you're going to color grade. If you just don't want to do any post-processing, then use GoPro color, but you should use flat and tweak it yourself would be better. What am I missing? I think that's it. It's Blunty who asks, is it really worth switching from mode 3 if I have a couple weeks of practice in? It's Blunty. I got to tell you, man, if you're only a couple weeks in, I would tell you to switch to mode 2. And here's why. You can look for my interview with Vic FPV. V-I-K is his name. You may know who he is already. But if you're only a couple weeks in, maybe you've never heard of him. He learned to fly mode 3. And he's an excellent pilot. You could fly in any mode, but the problem is, what if you meet me at I/O and you say, Bardwell, I got a problem with my quad. Will you give it a fly? See if you can figure out why it does this weird thing. Well, I can't fly mode 3. You're done. What if I say, hey, we want to fly my beast class? Sure, give it a go. Nope, it's in mode 2. Everybody else flies mode 2. Okay, not everybody, but what if you get a job as a drone pilot 5 years from now, and they say, here, we need you to help us film the next Avengers movie? That's going to be a mode 2 transmitter. So don't handicap yourself by learning some obscure mode that nobody else uses. It's like if you wanted to learn to play guitar and you said, you know what I think is a good idea? I'm going to flip it over left-handed and turn the strings upside down like Jimi Hendrix did. Okay, but you're never going to be able to play anyone else's guitar ever. So you're really just hurting yourself. Learn mode 2. Yes, I would definitely say if you're only a couple weeks in, it's going to hurt, but you'll be okay. Mode 2 USMCXX1. These modes refer to the stick layout. Throttle on the left, pitch on the right, etc. Flybat FPV, I haven't missed your super chat, but I haven't gotten to it yet either. Flybat FPV, thank you for $5. Is the FAA being educated between DJI-style drones and freestyle drones? If there's going to be a remote ID, they should at least be separate categories. Yeah, good point. Because, can I tell you, this goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning of who is the enemy, right? Because some people are saying, DJI did this to us. DJI sold us out. This is the FAA's Drone Advisory Committee. And let's see if I can find a list of the members. Yes, here they are. Here are the members of the Drone Advisory Committee. This is the committee that advises the FAA on drones. Dan Elwell, Deputy Administrator of the FAA. Makes sense. Chair, Precision Hawk USA, Inc. Who is that? Who is that? I don't know Precision Hawk. Airports, Director of the LA Airport, the Reno Tahoe Airport. Oh, okay. Airports, sure, that makes sense. Labor, National Air Traffic Controllers Association, Airline Pilots Association. Oh, okay, we got some. Yeah, okay. Local government, the Wisconsin DOT, Mayor of Fort Collins, Colorado, yada, yada, yada. New York City Fire Department. Okay. Keep going down this list. I'm not going to read you the whole list. Lockheed Martin, AOPA, UPS, American Airlines, Amazon Prime. Oh, here's DJI. Boeing. Who's not on this list? Oh, hang on. Here we are. Here's who represent the AMA. Yay, they're here. When people say, DJI did this to us, look at that list. The reason that these things, the reason that we don't, are not, our rights are not being represented here is because we don't have a voice in the room. And if we do have a voice, it's the AMA, and they're just one seat at the table, and they're drowned out by all those other voices. When you wonder why no one cares about what our the way we fly, that's why. And when you say, if you say, DJI did this to us, they knew that if they got this passed, then they would be the only ones to make drones that could comply with remote ID, and they would make $1 million. Well, they already make $25 billion a year by selling Mavics, so I think they're doing okay. But they are just one seat at this table, and anything DJI has to say, there are so many other voices in the traditional airline community that outweigh anything an FPV or RC pilot has to say. Something to think about. Dave Messina, the FPV Freedom Coalition participated in 3 tasking groups in 2019 and into this year. I'm glad that people like the FPV Freedom Coalition and the AMA are doing what they're doing. I don't want to suggest that they have no influence at all. I mean, they are getting in the room with these guys and getting their voices heard. But I just look at the Drone Advisory Committee and I see all the other voices from the traditional airline community, from the Department of Transportation, and they don't care about hobby. Who on that list gives a crap about hobbyists? The AMA, and even then they're not that interested in FPV. Just let's be straight here. Okay. All right. Dave Messina that says the DAC's recommendations to the FAA on remote ID were ignored. The DAC is important, but there are other ways we need to influence the FAA. That's interesting, Dave. I mean, if the DAC is being ignored, and if the AMA is a tiny slice of the DAC, then what are the chances of us getting our rights heard? So I've had a couple emails from people who say, I'm a lawyer and I think we need to take legal action. And there was another guy who said, I want to start a PAC, a political action committee. I think that I'm not an expert, but I feel like there's some validity to those approaches. At the same time, I feel like this is the kind of thing where you have to fight to win the battle. But at the same time, you have to prepare for the possibility that you will lose. And I know that that's not how every battle needs to be approached. There are life and death battles, literally, in the world, where you must win at all costs and never consider the possibility of defeat. Well, this isn't a life and death situation. And so when we have guys out there who are fighting to win this fight, at the same time, I think that if DJI is on the inside going, okay, well, we can make flight controllers that are compliant with this to let you guys still fly, I think that makes them they're not entirely on our side, but they're also might be our last best hope. Something like RedCat. RedCat is making flight controllers that have built-in black box logging that lets, I don't know, whatever, and help. And if RedCat, if this remote ID goes through and RedCat makes a flight controller that's a beta flight controller, but it has built-in remote ID, well, I mean, at least somebody did it. I don't know. Enoch FPV has a meeting with the ACLU about fighting the FAA this week. Hallelujah. I do think legal action is a good approach. I don't know how you can take legal action against a law that isn't passed yet, but I think there's a good approach to that. Janik wants to know, how can someone connect the DJI Air system with a Tyrannus? You can't. You can't. It doesn't work like that. Grabber says, I'm working on your all aux modes on one channel method, but pre-arm mode is not working. Yeah, you cannot do pre-arm with a single aux channel. I tried, by the way. A while back, I tried to figure it out. As near as I can tell, because the channel, you just can't do it, as far as I can tell. You must pre-arm with a second aux channel, so you'll need 2 channels if you're doing pre-arm mode. There should be a separate module to add remote ID to anything, not just specific flight controllers, says Chris Locke. Chris Locke, the problem is, and this, it's difficult to say for sure because this is all really up in the air. But as far as I can tell, the way I read the remote ID proposal is that you can't add remote ID module to like an open source flight controller. The way I read it, and I'm not a lawyer, but the way I read, and I did read it, by the way, the way I read it is that manufacturers and producers of drones and drone equipment must certify that the equipment is compliant with remote ID. Therefore, if you are manufacturing an open source Betaflight flight controller, how are you going to be able to demonstrate that? So the way I read it is that if you're going to do remote ID, you have to have a sort of an integrated system that will comply with the law. You can't just take a Betaflight drone and slap a remote ID module on it and have it work. That's how I read it. Pretend to Go is asking, I've seen you ask this several times, is there remote ID hope for EU guys? Pretend to Go, I don't know, I'm not sure how to interpret that. This is an American law. I haven't heard any sign that it's going to be rolled into the EU, although you never know. So I think you're okay for now. 831 FPV wants to know, can I do faster movements by going to 8K, 8K on the gyro? No, it doesn't work like that. Just set your rates how they need to be. Caddx Ratel freezing in the midair issue. A lot of people seem to experience. What's your opinion on Caddx overall? So Patrick FPV, I have heard of the Caddx Ratel freezing issue. I have never personally experienced it. If I did experience it, the first thing I would do is check the voltage. Are you powering it from 5 volts or VBAT, and is the voltage solid? That's just a guess. If it's powered off VBAT, then that's not the issue. In general, I think Caddx, I'm glad Caddx is out there. They make some good cameras and they make them at a cheaper price point than like RunCam and Foxeer. However, I think there's no question that Caddx build quality is not quite at the level of like a RunCam or a Foxeer, but they're cheaper. MO wants to know, what do you think of the Crossfire diversity receiver? Is it worth it? I don't fly the diversity receiver on any of my like regular FPV quads. For long range, it might be worth it. But like I have so much range, 250 milliwatts, regular nano receiver. I basically never fail safe until my video runs out. So I don't see the point of the diversity. Janik, can you use Crossfire on a Tyrannus to control the air unit? Well, no, but if you have a flight controller and a quad with the air unit on it, you could use a Crossfire receiver instead of the air unit and the DJI controller. And in fact, that's what I do on a lot of my quads, most of my quads. One of the exceptions is this little guy here. This is the Transtech Beetle. It's a little 2.5-inch quad with an air unit on it. This little guy has no receiver, so I have to use the DJI controller. But on most of my quads, I have a Crossfire receiver and I use my Jumper T16. That's right, Yannick. You just connect it up to the flight controller just like normal. Let's get a couple more super chats out of the way. Skyrot, thanks for 5 CHF. I don't know what those are off the top of my head. Thanks for so much for the support and for keeping the hobby positive. Thank you very much. I do my best. James Oxborough, thanks for £2. Do you have a video making the 2019 X9D Plus accept Crossfire? I do not, James. I'll be straight with you, James. I'm of two minds. One of my priorities is to make as many videos as I can that answer your questions. And a lot of people out there want to make Crossfire work with the X9D Plus. The other is to ask, like, let's go back to my editorial calendar. So this is my editorial calendar for the year. Let me jump to February. You'll see how it breaks down. Maybe March. Okay. So you guys are getting spoilered here. So what I've done is I've got Tuesday and Wednesday as product review, Thursday and Friday as either education or flight edit or tutorial. So and then Sunday and Monday, of course, is the Q&A. So basically, I've got 2 educational videos, 2 product reviews, and 2 live streams a week. And believe it or not, that fills up mighty freaking quick. So if we go back to January, these colored ones here, that's a day that's blocked out. The gray ones here haven't been filled up yet. So I'm already almost fully booked through the end of January with content that I know what I'm going to make. So when I ask myself, am I going to make a video about how to put Crossfire into a Tyrannus? Free Sky is like, screw you! Screw you, Crossfire! In fact, screw you, everybody who bought older receivers, and screw you, people with D8 mode, and I'm like, maybe I'm going to make content about something else. So, but basically all you need to do is, so having said that, basically all you need to do is download and flash OpenTX Companion and flash OpenTX version. Does OpenTX support the X90 Plus 2019 at this moment? I think it does. Let's double check. Let's double check here. So here in OpenTX Companion, I'm going to go Settings, Radio Profiles. I'm going to add a new radio profile, and my radio type is, So check it out right here. Tyrannus X90 Plus 2019. So just make a new radio and download the firmware and flash OpenTX, and voila, it will support Crossfire again. Free Sky distributes it with firmware that doesn't support Crossfire, but you can just reflash it. You'll need to get the SD card contents updated as well. MC's Creations, thanks for the suggestion. 5 reais, Brazilian reais, but Brazilians say R's as H's, because sure, why not? 5 Brazilian reais. Thank you for the suggestion to look at the Foxeer toothless camera. It's basically a copy of the Ratel, but made by Foxeer. Good suggestion. Thank you to Bonatti for 5 PLN as well. I think I've missed. Let's see. Fly NYC, thank you for $5. I read the FAA NPRM. It hits flying and manufacturing. If it would law, where would my channel be? Fly NYC, I hope. I have always, when I made the decision to go full time, I had to ask myself, what if the hobby gets knocked out? And one of the things I said is that my skill is taking a complex topic and breaking it down so people can understand it. And I hope that that skill would translate into other topics. It's one of the reasons why you see me branching out a little bit now into things like 3D printing. I mean, that's because I'm interested in that topic, but also a little bit as a hedge against the future. That being said, I think that FPV isn't going anywhere. FPV as we know it will probably change. But FPV has changed. And the people who love flying drones will keep flying them. And I hope to be there in whatever form it takes. Jake Heisman, thank you for $5. Is the highest end TBS Crossfire being updated to a new generation? I'm trying to buy it, but it's back ordered. I don't know anything about the TBS internal workings, Jake. So I can't really tell you there. Tilo, thank you for €5. Do you know a good HD video transmitter for live broadcasting, especially for quads or GoPros, like a Connex, but with a smaller form factor? Tilo, I think right now, like the DJI Air unit is one of the best ways to live broadcast high definition video, but it doesn't work, does it? Because it only takes their camera. You can't do a quad or GoPro. There are solutions out there for 1080 wireless, but what's the they're a broadcast. What is the company? Connex? No. What's the freaking company? I'm blanking. I'm sorry, man. The thing is, though, anything that takes a anything that takes like a HDMI input is going to be too big to fly, probably. So I don't have a good suggestion for you. Cement Kid, thanks for $10. Cement Kid thinks I'm the smartest guy in the business. Well, I know too many other smart people out there to accept that, but I do appreciate your donation and your compliment. Stunada in the Discord. Thank you for being a patron, Stunada. If you guys want to join my patrons over here in the Discord, hanging out, talking to each other, and the Discord is the first place I go in the morning when I go to answer questions. I answer all the questions eventually. I get to them, but I always go to the Discord first. If you want to join up, you can join my Patreon for as little as $2 a month. Say it with me, or more if you feel like I earned it. There's a link in the video description. Stonata wants to know, do you think this battery is done? Well, 1, 2, 3. I mean, nothing jumps out. Like, is it the internal resistance? Oh, I see. Whoops, my bad. Hang on, let's get a closer look at this. I see what you're getting at now. Yeah. So that's a little too big, I think. 43 milliohms, 5.2, 2.5 milliohms. Yeah, this cell is dead. Just get rid of this one. Yeah, 43 milliohms. When there's that much difference in the internal resistance, she done. I think you already knew that. Popular Mechanics, does that work for you, dude? I swear I tried this. Hang on. Popular Mechanics is saying that you can do pre-arm on a single aux channel like this. I swear I tried this and it didn't work. If it's that simple, why didn't it work for me the last time I tried this then? I don't know. Maybe this is the solution, though. If so, that's amazing. It seems like it would work. I remember trying it and it didn't work. Maybe there was something different about my last setup that made it not work. It's fantastic, though. How do I store my lipos when not using them? Asks Jeremy Sarge. I try to make sure they're at 3.8 volts. I don't always succeed at that. And they're usually just sitting on the desk back there. Just sitting there. Chris Whitehead wants to know if did I miss your super chat, Chris? I don't think so, but let me look. Chris, I see you gave £5, but I don't see a question. So if you meant to ask a question, I don't think you did. As a Dudunuk asks, what do you think about iFlight flight controllers? iFlight is pretty solid. I like them a lot. Do you have to register as a drone pilot in the USA? Yes, you do. You do. Jan wants to know, what does pre-arm do? Jan, pre-arm means you have to pull 2 switches to arm your quad instead of 1. It prevents you from accidentally arming your quad. Slid Graphics, is my VTX broken? I sent you a video on Instagram. I will get to it, but probably not on the live stream, Slid. Is there a storage option on any good charger? Swiss FPV asks. Yeah, most any charger will have a storage option, except for Tiny Whoop chargers, confusingly. Although I'm starting to figure out why. So I am actually working with, I'll say it, I'm actually working with Newbie Drone to, remember a long time ago I said I was going to talk to a manufacturer and get them to develop a 1S Whoop charger with a storage option. Some of you remember that. See, because here's the problem. You finish flying, when you fly Tiny Whoop batteries, a lot of the time you're just charging them as fast as you can and you're just flying and you're ripping around. Oh, hang on. Hang on, guys. We got a little stutter in my stream. I'm not sure why. Give that a second to, yeah. Hang on. I don't know what's happening. I'm not sure what's happening. Maybe one of my family started uploading something. Let's give that a second to get through. I'm going to keep talking since I hear the audio's okay. No, it's not OneDrive. I checked that. So you finish flying your Tiny Whoop, and then some of your batteries are fully charged. And how do you put them at storage? So I'm working with Newbie Drone to develop a device that'll put the 1S batteries at storage. Those batteries, I think one of the reasons that 1S batteries often don't last very long is because they're not put to storage. You just put them away fully charged. But one of the problems we're running into is that even discharging at like a half an amp generates a ton of heat, and we have to deal with that. So we're working on it, but we'll see. I have never flown in Switzerland, Sleet Graphics. Tony Cake lives in Switzerland, and it looks gorgeous. My live stream is still stuttering, and I don't know why. One time I was flying and had perfect video, but then my quad went into failsafe. How's that possible? I mean, it fail-safed because your receiver had a problem. So the fact that you had good video doesn't mean... I mean, your receiver can fail-safe when you go out of range, but also because your antenna is broken or because your receiver lost power. There's a million reasons why you could fail-safe. Thoughts on the Foxeer Razor? Foxeer Razor. Hang on a second. The Foxeer Razor... I believe this is the replacement for the Foxeer Arrow. Notice that it's a CMOS camera. I think the Arrow was a CCD camera. I can't remember if that's right, or I could be wrong about that. But I believe this is the new budget camera from Foxeer. I liked the Arrow. The Arrow looked really good. I should go ahead and order one of these and check it out because the Arrow has been discontinued. The Arrow was my budget camera go-to forever. It was like $20 and it was a decent looking camera. I haven't seen it, but I do. I hope that it takes the place of the Arrow since the Arrow's gone. Because for $20, it seems like a pretty good deal. We could check out. Who is this? We could check this guy out. Oh, this is just Foxeer. Well, I don't usually trust manufacturer videos. Razer Mini is really good for the price, says Scuzzy FPV. Some people in the Discord are suggesting that my stream is getting messed up because the FAA is screwing it up. Is the Micro Arrow gone too? Hey, Eternal Maver, I'm sure you can still get them, but a vendor reached out to me and said, we're building a ready-to-fly quad, and the camera that we were using isn't available anymore. What should we use? And I said, Foxeer Arrow? And he said, nah, we can't get that either. So I think the Arrow is on the way out. Z Pranks, my quad has failsafed 3 times in the past 2 days. It's never done this before. Any ideas? Z Pranks, you got to figure out why the failsafe is happening. Personally, I would probably just replace the receiver. I wouldn't throw the old receiver out just in case, but I would probably just replace the receiver. Hellinger Bimbam. I put the battery wrong into my new X-Lite. Some smoke. Now bad RSSI without antenna. I don't know what you fried, dude, but you put the battery in wrong and the smoke came out. Something fried. I'm sorry to say, something fried. You could try replacing the radio board. That might be a thing to do. I'm surprised they don't have reverse voltage protection on it, to be honest with you. Hilo FPV, thank you for $5 in the super chat. On my DJI Betaflight OSD, it reads like 4S, even though I'm running 6S with the air unit powered through a dedicated BEC. How do I fix it? You should be getting... Hilo FPV, are you sure you're not accidentally looking at your goggle voltage and you're using a 4S to power the goggle? You should be getting VBAT through the MSP protocol from your flight controller, and you should see the same flight control voltage that the flight controller is reading. The fact that you're powering the air unit through a BEC doesn't matter, because the air unit doesn't report its supply voltage, which I've always thought was an oversight, because what if you have like a flying wing and you don't have a flight controller? How could you monitor voltage? Well, you could power the air unit from a 4S or a 3S, and then it could just put its supply voltage in the OSD, but it doesn't do that, which I've always thought was a problem. An oversight, at least. Mikkel Dam Samuelson wants to know, what will the fine be if you don't fly with remote ID? I can tell you, Mikkel, without naming any names, I know some pilots who have been fined by the FAA, and the fine is typically around $10,000 or $15,000 for the kind of things that they did. Who knows what the future will be, but... Chris Whitehead meant to leave a super chat. I can't decide. EV300 is 247 pounds. Sky Zone is 213. Sky 030 is 309. All close on price. Which do you prefer? Chris, I got to tell you, the EV300 has great specs at that price, but personally, I would take the Sky Zone, Sky 030, because the Eachine build quality is just a little bit less good than Sky Zone's. Many Eachine goggles are good, but I feel like in terms of build quality, there's Fat Shark, and Sky Zone's probably up there with Fat Shark in terms of build quality. Really, really good. They occasionally have a dud. Everybody will. And then Eachine is like a little bit below him, but definitely below him. But then they're all good. But between those, I would probably take the Sky 030. Yeah. Matt RC says, remember, with a self-built craft, you are responsible for ensuring compliance. Well, yes, but no, Matt RC, because as far as I can tell from the way and I'm not a lawyer, but the way I read the NPRM is that that the manufacturer has to certify the methods they use to ensure that their drone is compliant. So if you buy a kit from, let's say, DJI, and you assemble the kit, you are not the producer. You just assembled the kit, so you're not responsible. But if you want to build your own quad from hardware that you put together, this is how I read it, you have to go to the FAA and get them to certify that your production methods are compliant, at which point you can't do it. Looks like we're having some more stuttering. I don't know what's going on, guys. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. Gonna have some lag today. Pappy points out that the FAA bulletin says single infractions start at $2,600. Yeah, the 10 to 15K. Usually what happens in my experience, thank God I haven't been fined by the FAA yet, but usually what happens is the FAA will stack multiple infractions, and therefore each infraction is $2,600 or whatever, but because they try to get you for multiple infractions, you get dinged. Thanks for $2. So is sub 250 gram covered by remote ID? No, not currently. Currently, sub 250 grams is exempt. However, there's at least one paragraph in the NPRM where the FAA says, basically, we're not sure that weight is actually the right criteria to be using to decide who's exempt. And so that means that either they're thinking about letting heavier quads be exempt, no, or they're thinking about getting rid of the exemption for sub 250 gram. That's how I read it. Does the FAA fine based on YouTube videos? Asks Jeremy Sarge. Well, here's how it works, Jeremy. Someone calls the FAA and says to them, I've seen this video and I think it's in violation. Like, let's take Peter Schrippel. Peter Schrippel built his own airplane. It was an ultralight, and he built it himself and he flew it. and somebody called and he made a video about this. This is not inside information, just for the record. Somebody called the FAA and said, this guy is breaking the law. The FAA sent Peter Schiphol a letter and said, basically, we have had a report and we are now obligated to follow up on the report. And they asked him to verify that his craft was under the weight limit. I think it was 250 kilos, but I'm not sure. So Peter Schiphol took a video of him hanging his craft from a crane with a big fishing scale and showed that it was under the required weight, and the FAA went, okay. So the FAA is not, as far as I can tell, out there watching your videos and looking for violations. But if you do something screwy and then someone calls the FAA and says, hey, this guy broke the law, then they may investigate. And they may use your YouTube video as evidence in the investigation. Popular Mechanics wants to know, would an event like I.O. be exempt from remote ID? No. Nope. As long as the grounds are considered one of the approved areas. Aha. So Popular Mechanics, here's my understanding of how it will work. If we assume that Muncie Airfield is acknowledged to be an FRIA or FRIA, that is a area where it is legal to fly without using remote ID. Now, in order for that to happen, a CBO, a community-based organization, would have to submit an application to that effect. Is Muncie an AMA field? It might be. I don't know. If Muncie was an AMA field, we could assume that it would be categorized as a FRIA under this rule. When you're at a FRIA, you actually are not allowed to fly quads that are certified as limited or full remote ID. You might think that, well, if I can fly it with limited remote ID, certainly I could also fly it line of sight, right? Or whatever. Nope. The NPRM as it currently stands says it's AMA headquarters. Thank you, Dave. I wasn't sure about that. I was like, I think, is that the one? I wasn't 100% sure. Thank you for clarifying. That sounds pretty dumb, but anyway, so my reading of it is that if you're at a FRIA, you can only fly non-remote ID quads, which means that if you had a racer that you put remote ID on because you wanted to fly it somewhere else, you couldn't fly it at I.O. Anyway. Yeah, it's not just an AMA field. It is AMA headquarters. Okay. And, I'm going to have to get on this because I am actually taking over the, where is it? I will be taking over I can't find it. There must have been an announcement about this because people were asking about it earlier in the chat and I hadn't announced it, but I can't find the announcement. I'm actually going to be taking over the bi-monthly drones column in the AMA magazine. So once every other month, I will be doing a column about drones. I got to tell you, I had second thoughts when this remote ID thing came out as to whether I really wanted to do it. And what I decided was that the best thing to do is to try to have my voice heard. I mean, rather than just have my voice, have a wider audience for my voice. So I decided I would keep it up. So it was announced during the AMA Air video. Oh, cool. I didn't know that. Gus G, why does the FAA believe they own the airspace on my 37-acre field? Gus G, I'm not going to go into the legal basis for this, but this is an issue that has been well hashed out in the history of America as airplanes became a thing. And the gist of it is this. If each individual person owned the airspace above their property, then the the national airspace would not be navigable. You could not fly from Atlanta to San Francisco without negotiating the right with every single private landowner whose property you flew over. And the whole government went, fuck that. And then just decided that you don't own that airspace. That's the gist of it. Sleet Graphics, thank you for 5 CHF. Do you think good material is the key to FPV or not? By good material, do you mean good parts? I do think there's some truth to that. If you have a crappy builder and crappy parts, you will get a crappy flying quad. That's what I'll say. A good builder can take crappy parts and make a decent flying quad. But what you often see is a first-time builder buys the cheapest possible parts and then has a crappy flying quad and then asks, how do I PID tune this? And the answer, and you can get, I mean, yeah, sure, let's PID tune it. But the answer is actually be a better builder. Before you decide that you need to be an expert PID tuner, you probably need to be a better builder. But, I mean, you get to be a better builder by doing builds. In the meantime, you have your first quad ever, which you did a crappy job building, and you want to get it flying. So, obviously, you're going to do that. Is the FAA going to end the hobby? Asks Jackson Bamsey. Jackson Bamsey, and anyone else who's wondering that question, can I remind you how the hobby began? The hobby began when somebody pulled the accelerometer out of their multi-Wii nunchuck and stuck it, combined it with an Arduino, and turned that into, this is an actual, I don't think this is the right picture. This is, I don't know what this is. I'm trying to find a picture of that very first one. Where's that very, there it is. Somebody pulled the accelerometer out of a, yeah. So, the hobby will be fine. The kind of person who's going to pull the accelerometer out of a multi-Wii nunchuck and hook it up with an Arduino, I mean, right now, guys like Dominic Clifton, and they could just make a flight controller, send it off to a fab shop to be printed, and fly it. So the hobby will, but the question is, how accessible will the hobby be to the average person? And another way to put it might be, the hobby will change, but maybe people will become users instead of hobbyists. Maybe instead of having to, or being able to, solder and design and program your own flight controller, it'll be more like DJI, where you just kind of buy it and fly it. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I don't know. I think it's possible that things like remote ID will force the hobby to become more accessible. I know this isn't what you want to hear. Fuck the FAA. Pardon the F word. That's 2 this stream. I apologize, parents. If there ever was a stream where it was appropriate to say the F word, I think this is it. I think it's possible that by forcing larger manufacturers, we'll have less choice, but maybe the things we do have the choice to get will be easier to use. I don't know. That's a thought that I've had. Thank you, Joe D, for a $10 super chat. Thanks for all the great videos. Iceman Jones is trying to get an answer to this question. What's the receiver in the Beta 65S? I think most Beta quads come with a bunch of different receivers, don't they? So there's no way to answer that question, Iceman, because the Beta quad can be ordered with a FreeSky, DSMX, FlySky, or Futaba receiver. Now the question is this a crazy bee? If this is a Crazy Bee flight controller, you can just change the protocol in software. But if it has a real receiver, then you can't switch. Flight controller. It's a beta. Yeah, they have the brushed FC and the no RX FC. The FlySky FC. It looks like they're different flight controllers entirely. So it comes with multiple different types of receivers. It just depends on which one's in there. Bill W. wants to know, can I solder the receiver leads from the DJI Air unit to the same pads on the flight controller that my XM Plus is on? Yeah, Bill, you can use... Well, obviously, you're not going to use 5 volts to power it, but the S-Bus wire, yes, absolutely. It's Blunty in the Discord wants to know, how low do you recommend running batteries on Tiny Whoops, like little 1S, 2S batteries? Honestly, It's Blunty, those little 1S batteries, they have such short flight times. I run them all the way down to like 3.1 volts or maybe 3.0 volts. I would never do that on a bigger battery, but those little whoops, I mean, some of them, you'll be down at 3.8 volts the minute you take off just from sag on the PH 2.0 connector. So I run them all the way down. Those Tiny Whoop batteries don't last very long anyway, so just flog them till they die. Sam D, yes, you can. If you have a Crazy Bee flight controller with a built-in SPI receiver, the protocol is controlled by the flight controller, and you can change from FlySky to FreeSky to Spectrum. It doesn't freaking matter. It's right there in the Betaflight configuration tab. But only if you have an SPI receiver, like on the Crazy Bee board. David Lasowski, smart audio isn't working for you, David. David, the answer is that your VTX table is set up wrong. I know you think you set it up right, but it's not right. And I'm not sure I can troubleshoot it for you here on the live stream, but that is the answer. Drone Racer says, and that's why your batteries don't last. No, come on, Drone Racer. Come on. I mean, the thing is, they don't last because they're cheap and crappy. So you may as well flog them. That's my opinion. It is true, though, as Distorted FPV points out, that the voltage does bounce back after you land. You run them down to 3.1 and 3.0 under load, and it bounces up to 3.5 or 3.6. So, but the difference is, it seems like there's a lot more sag. The other thing to keep in mind is that the connector is giving you like 0.1 volts of sag anyway. So when it reads 3.1, you're actually at 3.2. So I don't go below 3.0, but I do run them all the way down. That's what I do. And I will say, I didn't used to do that. Once upon a time, I was in San Diego. By coincidence, I went and visited the Newbie Drone guys, and they were like, nah, run them down. So I was like, hey, it's good enough for them. Neil Camera, I want to get the DJI goggles. If they fixed the freezing and reboot, I've never heard of that issue, Neil, so I guess they fixed it. Siadi, thank you for $2.22. Siadi says, keep cursing. Prepare people for my potty mouth. Yeah. So Siadi FPV is in the chat. Just gave a super chat. That's who we're talking about. He is going to be streaming after me. A lot of people ask, who the hell is Arana Siati? They can't spell his name. And to be fair, he has a weirdly spelled name. But I keep saying his name, and everybody's like, who is this guy? It's AHREN. CIOTTI, Siati FPV. And he's going to be streaming after me for a couple hours. What are you doing today, Siati? I'm going to be going for another about a half hour till 3 p.m. And then Siati's going to come on. So if you love streaming, there's more than you could possibly want. Mangus, I talked about the Roto Riot acquisition earlier in the stream, so let's not go back. You can go back in the DVR and see for yourself. What do you do with dead Tiny Whoop batteries? I have a giant ammo can full of dead batteries, and eventually I'm going to take them like to Batteries Plus or something and discard them. Big plans for 2020, says Siati. 1505 motors, Mobula 6 versus Acroby brushless. Ooh, I haven't got the Acroby brushless yet. Newbie Drone, why haven't you sent me the Acroby brushless? I say that, but then people send me product and I sit on it and I don't review it for months, so I guess I can't really complain. Why did Ciati get one, though? Ciati, why did you get one? And I didn't get one. Probably because he reviews it and I don't. There you go. John A. says, I want to get the DJI HD system as well, but did they fix the problem where you can't stand next to an analog transmitter? Jan, there's no fixing that. The DJI goggle transmits. It's a transmitter, so it will always interfere with a receiver that it's near to. That isn't a fixable problem. That will not go away. So you need to space yourself out. That's just a fact. Let's see here. Ciati is as brilliant as Joshua, says Spriteny FPV. Ciati is pretty freaking smart. I give him credit for knowing a lot about micros, which he does. But he knows a thing or two about 5 inches, too. Let's do a... check this out. Ciati. Remember this? Let me show you guys. Where's the... there we go. Alrighty. Let's do a... this is... I was flying with Ciati. This, I would like to say for the record, that this was not a Part 107 flight. Part 107 only allows you to fly up to civil twilight. You need a waiver to fly after dark. This was not a Part 107 flight. This was not a commercial flight. This flight was undertaken for recreational purposes only. Ciati showed me this awesome location. And I want to be clear, Ciati tore this up. This was like... I was kind of feeling it out, but he really tore this place up. Jeremy Sarge, the intent at the time of the flight is what determines whether this needs to be a 107 or not. So if at the time of the flight the intent is recreational, then if it is later monetized, then you're still good to go. I kept trying to pop up and drop straight back in. But I think that either I was exiting offline or there was a little bit of wind. Whoop. Oh, drop back in. Yeah, there. I was starting to get a move or two. There we go. So yeah, the way that 107 works is that the intent at the time of the flight is what determines whether it's a commercial flight. So the example that I like to use is if you are flying at the park and while you're flying, aliens land and you capture that on video, and then a news organization pays you for the footage, that is not a 107 flight. Because at the time that you were flying, the intent of the flight was recreational. And then later it was incidentally commercialized. Now, if you are a professional who regularly posts on YouTube and you're like, oh no, that I was just flying recreationally, and then later I just decided to commercialize it on YouTube. I mean, eventually the FAA will be like, no, we don't buy it. But just because someone, like right now, this is a monetized live stream, and I was like, well, I'll show it. Just off the cuff. But at the time that I did it, it was recreational. I had no intention at the time that I did it to make money. In fact, sometimes I have to say to myself, stop thinking about YouTube and just fly, you dope. Anyway, there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. John Dyson wants to know, is this the same place you did that weird prop review? Yep, it is. That was a commercial flight. This one was not. And it was Civil Twilight anyway. Jason wants to know, is the full-speed FSD XT60 current sensor accurate? Probably not. Jason, you have to calibrate almost every current sensor that you buy. Unless the manufacturer calibrated it for you, you have to calibrate it. So it's probably not accurate. How do I get a ham license? Asks Kevin Schindler. Kevin Schindler, I have a video about how I got my ham license. I used hamstudy.org, and how everybody learns differently. But for me, the easiest way to learn was just to look at the sample questions and study the sample questions. And I just kept taking these practice tests on hamstudy.org. It's free, by the way. I just kept taking the practice tests on hamstudy.org until I had like a 95% pass rate. Then I went and took the test, and I succeeded. That's how I learned. Tony Meja, stop supporting DJI and see how that affects them. Stop. You guys, listen. Let's be real here. We got to be, you know what? I'm all for like idealism, but you got to be real too. If every single DJI made $25 billion with a B, billion dollars last year. So I hear. If every single FPV pilot stopped buying DJI, they would be like, oh, well, that FPV thing didn't pan out, and they would just get the heck on with their life. So this idea that you're going to boycott DJI and the only thing that would do is stop them from making FPV products. Would they stop? If you assume that DJI is lobbying the FAA to take away our rights so that we can only ever fly DJI quads ever again, let's imagine the worst case scenario. Then DJI is also making FPV gear. And DJI says, we think FPV is pretty awesome. We want to be a part of FPV. So let's say everybody in FPV goes, screw you, DJI. We're not buying. And we all boycott them. And DJI goes, oh, well, okay. Buy FPV. They're still going to do exactly what they did. We're going to do in the FAA. And they're still going to have $25 billion from selling Mavics. So don't boycott DJI because boycott them if you don't want to buy them. Do whatever you want with your money. Absolutely. But don't think that you're going to have some net positive effect by boycotting them. Because number one, they don't need your money. They have plenty of money. All it will do is make them stop. Right now, DJI is a little bit on our side. DJI made their goggles work with Betaflight flight controllers. What world am I living in where that ever happened? They're a little bit interested in FPV. Why? I don't know. It's not for the money. But they are, and they're making FPV products. If the FAA says tomorrow you can only fly DJI drones that have this built-in monitoring, then I hope DJI makes us a damn good FPV drone so at least we have something to fly if we want to obey the law, which not everybody does. And by the way, some of us will just keep flying illegal drones, and that's fine too. But some people want to obey the law. Mobulus 7 or Mobulus 6? Asks Wavy Hertz FPV. Mobulus 6, no question. No question. Now, Mobulus 6 versus Beta 65 Meteor. That one I'm saving for my review. Wait a minute. FPV Alert. FPV Alert says, you started out with, don't get it. It will ruin FPV manufacturers and small brands. And now you support them. Support who? When did I say don't get DJI? DJI will ruin FPV manufacturers and small brands. I don't think I ever said that. I don't think I ever said that. Did I ever say that? Okay, Popular Mechanics is telling me DJI only has $2 billion in sales. I heard the $24 billion number somewhere. Okay, it's only $2 billion. They have an estimated valuation of $15 billion. It's a big number, is my point. Fattest Shark Attitude versus Skyzone 02CS? I'd take the Skyzone. Have I reviewed the Newbie Drone Smooth motors? No, not yet, Thomas Bird. Thomas Bird, I think the Newbie Drone Smooth motors are going to go into a build, and the build will be at the beginning of February. That's what it's looking like. Blitz FPV, please help. I have hot standoffs and screws just by powering up the quad. You have current flow, Blitz FPV. Current flow, and since you have hot standoffs, I'm going to guess that you have positively charged. You have what ESC is it, Blitz? I'm going to guess that it's one of the very few ESCs with the mounting pads connected to the positive wire, which is stupid and no one should do it. You'll need to use nylon. You should just use a different ESC, but I understand that you may not be able to afford that. You're going to want to use nylon standoffs and nylon screws. That's the answer. But you really should just get a different ESC. Copter Flight says, do you know why my freaking Fat Shark goggles beep when my cells are at 8 volts? Yeah. The low voltage cutoff, Copter Flights, is way too high on the Fat Shark goggles. And there's no way to change it. So, super annoying. But there isn't a fix. What the hell, Rob M? Rob M, I hope you are out of here. Not worth my time to watch Bardwell not take this business seriously. Rob M, do you think I'm not taking it seriously? Because I don't think you watched the whole stream, dude. I don't blame you. It's a 2-hour stream. But sorry, dude. I've talked about all of this stuff extensively. And now, at the end of 3 hours of talking about it, 40-minute video I did with the FPV Freedom Coalition, and I've been talking about it on and off throughout this whole live stream. At the end of it, I say, look, if we're truly screwed, then I hope that at least somebody throws us a freaking crumb while we're getting. If we're gonna get screwed, if we're gonna get screwed by the FAA, I hope that DJI is sitting there with a bottle of lube while it's happening, and you're like, screw this. How dare you say anything positive at all? Do you think I'm not taking it seriously? I think you're not paying attention. You're not paying attention. See you, Rob. See you later, dude. When's my Cinedrone vid coming out? Asks Flybad FPV. Good questions, Flybad. Can I invite you? And I'm going to be putting this up on my website so everybody can follow along. This is my editorial calendar. I'm starting off 2020 on the right foot. Normally, I make videos just by looking at a giant pile of stuff that I'm supposed to review and going, which have I had the longest? But I'm actually trying to organize myself. The Cinewhoop week is scheduled for the January 28th. I got the iFlight, the Holy Bro, the Roto Riot, Shenron Squirt, and the Diatone. And maybe we'll do one more thing this week, like a Real Steady Go tutorial or something. But Cinewhoop week is going to be the week of the 27th on my channel. So that's when that'll be coming out. Olgo's, the DJI definitely ships the FPV system to Europe and Asia and elsewhere in the world. Yeah, the editorial calendar is not currently public. I could make it public. How do I do that? Then you could. I'm going to put it on my website. Can I make it public? Settings. I'm not going to do that here on the live stream. I'll figure it out. But yeah. Carve FPV in the Discord asks, does D-Shot burst off and schedule or optimize on need to be set up? No. Carve FPV, that's old information. D-Shot burst and schedule or optimize. Back before Betaflight 4.1 came out, you had to do some CLI stuff to get bidirectional D-Shot working. Carve FPV, that is not. You just look up my RPM filter guide. I think you're looking at an old video from Albert Kim with old information. Yeah, no, that's what? That's January 4th, 2020? Okay, first of all, Albert Kim, tired of long videos to try out RPM filter? Albert, I uploaded a 1-minute tutorial to Instagram on how to do RPM filtering. So you can get it under 1 minute and you'll be caught up. I don't know why he tells you you need to do that. You do not need to do that. The default in Betaflight, by default, all you have to do is just enable bidirectional D-Shot and it starts working. I don't know why he's telling you to do this. I'm looking for, he says additional settings in Betaflight needed. I don't think that's true in Betaflight 4.1. But Albert's a smart guy. I don't know why he would tell you to do that. It should already be done. Anyway, I don't think it could hurt. So why not? But I've never done it. I mean, maybe he's got a good reason for doing it. Why don't we ask him? See if anyone has asked. Oh, here we go. Raven187 says, oh, I see. So Betaflight handles that automatically. Albert has noticed that when he turned on bidirectional D-Shot, they stayed on auto. So he recommends turning them off manually. But that's silly. Unless you have a reason to believe that auto is not working, leave it on auto. My guess, I've been in this position before. My guess is, I don't know. I don't think you need to do that. There you go. Yeah, Betaflight took care of that. Yeah. I'm going to guess that he put that stuff in because he remembered it. Here's my guess. My guess is Albert started doing that back when Betaflight didn't do it automatically. And then he just kept doing it because he figured why not. But it works. The auto setting works. So you don't need to do it manually. And I wouldn't tell people to do it unless there's a good reason, which there isn't. Guys, we're coming up to the end of the stream. Thank you so much for sticking around for a couple hours. This stream actually had one of my highest concurrent viewers ever. We almost hit 900 concurrent viewers. So thank you guys so much for that. I knew it would be a big stream with all the FAA stuff going on. I'm glad to get a bunch of that stuff off my chest. If you didn't watch the beginning of the stream, please go back to watch the beginning of the stream at some point in the future. Check out, because I feel like there's more to be said about remote ID and who the enemy is and where we need to be focusing our attention. Please don't let the fact that I say things like, if this is inevitable, then I hope that we have somebody on our side. Don't let that, eventually you get to the point where you're like, well, what if this is going to happen? Then what? But for now, we definitely should be focusing on fighting this. And I'm looking forward to some of the things I hear people talking about doing to help fight it. Things like forming a political action committee, things like the ACLU filing a lawsuit. I have to say, I mean, like, I'd like to say I'm a realist, but I'm probably a pessimist. Think about, like, I remember when net neutrality Remember net neutrality? Some of you do. Some of you have never heard of it. Net neutrality was a thing that the FAA or the FCC did, and there was an enormous public outcry against the repeal of net neutrality. There was as much political action as I have seen almost in my lifetime about such an obscure thing. Of course, I spend a lot of time on Reddit, so Reddit cared a lot. People organized letter writing campaigns, marches, and net neutrality, the repeal went through because Comcast wanted it, and Comcast, lots of money. That's what it boiled down to. And at that moment, I was like, why? What? We're we're effed. So here I see this, and I'm like, let's fight it. But it's not my first time. And on some level, I'm also like, let's be real that our voice might be wasted. And if that's true, then what? So, all right. The next stream, stick around. At 3 p.m., Aaron Ciotti is going to be streaming on his channel, not on mine. Aaron, go ahead and post the link. And I will be streaming again tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. More of the same. And what's coming up on the channel this week? I can tell you because I have an editorial calendar now. This week on the channel, Tuesday, we've got the Ken Heron Mavic Mini video. You already saw my review of the Mavic Mini. You can watch me and Ken we did a little bit of goofy fun stuff, not just a bench review. You can watch us stick our fingers into the props of the Mavic Mini and see what happens. Wednesday will be my review of the Ender 3 3D printer. Thursday, I'm taking all the guts out of my Freakstyle frame, which has my Falco X Flight 1 flight controller in it. Then I'm putting it in the Lumineer. I'm taking them out of the Schizo Nova and putting it into the Lumineer Freakstyle. And then Friday will be the Mobulus 6 review. So that's what's coming up this week on the channel. Look forward to that. Steve FPV, RC is not dead now. RC will stay alive. Because here's the thing. The people who are willing to break the law are just going to keep doing what they're doing today. And most of them won't get caught. You will still be able to buy a Betaflight flight controller from Banggood. Maybe US-based retailers will not be able to import them, although that will suck for guys like Tim Nilsson and Tyler Brennan and all of their employees. But, like, in my opinion, the worst-case scenario, realistically, if you are willing to break the law, the worst-case scenario is that you continue to buy parts from China and build quads and do what you do, and probably nobody finds you and everything is fine. For those who need to obey the law, it may be a little more bleak. Jake Rubel, thanks for $2. D-Shot 600 for F7 or stay 300? You can do 600 on F7, Jake. That's no problem. Ricky Church, thanks for $2. You win. I learned something today. Ciotti's posting the link to his live stream. And I'm going to get out of here. Yeah, Ken and I both still have all our fingers, although Ken was like, hey, you could stick your fingers in these props and it doesn't hurt. And I was like, okay, you do it. And then Ken did, and, well, you'll see. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the video. Thank you so much for sticking around. Go watch Ciotti's live stream if you want to see some more. He's posting the link. I'll wait for him to post the link one more time. Then I'm going to get out of here and get on with the rest of my Sunday. One more time, Ciotti. Come on, buddy. He's waiting. I got to wait for it to, the delay. The live stream delay. There it is. All right, you guys. Happy Sunday, everybody.